All right, let's jump into how to watch film effectively. So this is going to be the section where we jump into what's top of mind for me. And so I want to break down the reasons that we watch film. The first reason is entertainment. So this is really for fun, enjoyment, and it doesn't make that much impact to our game. As much as we want to give ourselves an excuse that, watching film is good, sometimes we just watch it because it's enjoyable and we love Frisbee and we're frothers, and that's why we watch it. Okay. The second reason is education. So the purpose of watching film in this case is for improvement, learning. And this is the way that we actually use film as a tool to make an impact to our game. All right. So the question is, how can we tell the difference between when we're watching film for the purpose of entertainment and when we're watching film for the purpose of education? And so I want to bring us a step back and I want to say, okay, cool. Probably right now, you probably have a focus area in your game. You probably have something that you're working on. And I like to point you guys to my pillars. So throwing, cutting, catching, and defense. One of these, one particular skill, one particular aspect, you're probably currently working on. And you might be trying to improve that skill set. And you might have certain things, blockers that you're trying to go through. And so the idea of being able to delineate between entertainment and education is it is only education if you are watching film to solve a blocker that you are currently trying to break through. Okay, so I'll say that again. It is only education if you are watching film to solve a blocker that you are currently trying to break through. Otherwise, it's entertainment. All right, so the idea is if there's something we're working on that we can use film as a tool to help us improve, right? So if my goal is to say, find situations in a game where I can lay out on defense ball. If I'm watching a game for the purpose of finding opportunities to get more bids and watching that specifically, then we can call it education because I'm using it to solve a blocker because I don't know where to bid on the field. But if my goal is still bidding on defense, but I'm just watching a game and they're completing hammers and hucks and crossfield break throws, then you'd argue that it's just entertainment. I'm just watching it for the purpose of enjoyment. By the way, it is okay to watch film for entertainment. That's completely fine. We're frothers. We're here to have fun. We want to stay updated on what's happening in Ultimate. So it's completely fine. And that's why we have the cheeky Ulti-World group access. And so if you are watching Ulti-World for entertainment, if you are watching Frizz for entertainment, grab your favorite drink. This is what I picked up yesterday. Get a bucket of popcorn, lay back and relax. Just have fun, take it in, whatever it is. But you're probably here to get better and you probably want to understand how we can effectively watch film for the purpose of education. And so this is the way I want you guys to think about it. Step one, we got a blocker. All right. So we have something that we're struggling to deal with in our game. So in my previous example, I'm struggling to find out where to lay out on defense. And so the first question you should ask is, do I even need film? Option one, no, I don't need film. I should just ask the Ultimate Academy or I should go train. Then the outcome is you should go do that. If you do need film, yes, film will help me learn and understand this particular scenario more. Then we'll jump into the next page and we'll talk about how we can use film as a tool and how we can maximize our leverage when we're watching film. I'm going to take a pause. Are there any questions so far up to this point?
No.
Pretty clear? Can we understand the delineation between film for the purpose of entertainment and film for the purpose of education?
Yep.
Cool. Now we're going to talk into how we can actually use film for the purpose of education. And so this is what I kind of brainstormed, came up with when I think, okay, if I were to make a film session the most productive, how would I do that? So how to watch film. First of all, notebook and pen and open a Google Doc. So study shows that if you write things down, it's more likely to sink in. And so you probably notice that, if you have a pen and paper, you'll be able to keep tabs on it, keep it front of mind for longer. And I also want you to open a Google Doc, and we're going to go into that, what we're going to use the Google Doc for in a second. Then I want you to write clearly at the top of the page what your current blocker is. So if that is finding flick huck shapes or inside breaks or give go handler movement or laying out in defense or defensive positioning, write exactly what that one current blocker is, big letters, top of the page, because that needs to be that one focus that we're trying to solve. And then from there, we're taking detailed notes on the things that you're seeing that will solve your blocker. So you're writing down things that are helping you solve that shape for your flick huck, or notes that are going to help you find those defensive bid opportunities in that game. Last two things, we're going to take screenshots and paste it in the Google Doc. Ideally, we can annotate them as well. So circle them. So you understand certain areas of the field or certain game states, scenarios that might be helpful to solve your blocker. And an important thing is we don't want to write things down that are unrelated to your current blocker. All right. Any questions on this slide? Cool. Welcome, Ryan. I'm going to mute you. Cool. So moving on. The reason why we don't want to write things down that are unrelated to our current blocker is because we can think about our energy this way. If we have a lot of focuses, our energy is diverted. And so there's just so many things when it comes to ultimate frisbee. There's throwing, there's cutting, there's catching, there's defense. Within throwing, there's shape, there's front edge, there's timing, there's distance, there's power, right? And there's pivots. That's just with the release points. That's just within throwing, right? And so there's so many things that we can work on when it comes to ultimate. And if we divert our energy around, we're only going to get these short stubs of improvement that end up not amounting to anything at all. But our goal is really to take one piece, one aspect of the game, and put our energy there. And so we can put all our energy and focus, keep our energy top of mind, keep our mind focused on one topic. And we want to build that up. And so we might focus on laying out in defense. That might be the one thing that we're building up. And the idea is over the course of a few weeks, a few months, we'll have individual focuses every single week so that we can tackle one off at a time. And so instead of saying, I'm going to work on throwing here, I'm going to work on catching here, I'm going to work on defense here, all in one moment, we're going to take one focus in one specific pillar. We're going to build that up. And then we're going to shift to a slightly different focus in that pillar. We're going to build that up, build the next thing up, build the next thing up. And then that's when we can actually have a complete set of skills that we can actually use. So it's the difference between having our energy diverted in multiple different places at once, not really improving at any one thing, compared to having many things that we end up being good at because we've focused at each moment in time. Okay. Pop quiz. What movie is this from? Feel free to unmute if you know what movie this is from. Clue 1, early 2000s. Clue 2, dystopian.
Matrix.
The Matrix. Very good. Okay. And so in The Matrix, next question. Is this woman good or bad?
Bad.
Bad. Why is she bad, Luca?
I think she's an illusion. I can't really remember.
Yeah. So she actually ends up being one of these agents, Agent Smith. And so the question is, why is she bad? Why is she bad in this movie?
She's a distraction.
Noah, because she is a distraction. Perfect. Right. And so the idea is in the movie The Matrix, the woman in the red dress is a distraction. She's trying to distract Keanu Reeves, Neo, from the fact that he is in a simulation, right? And she ends up being one of these agents. And so the idea is we don't want to get distracted from what our goals are. We don't want to get distracted from what our focus and what our priority is at the moment. In Ultimate, we're going to have women in the red dress. We're going to have this woman in the red dress that's saying, hey, let's work on our full field backhand hook, or hey, let's work on this particular nuanced defensive skill. But we always need to take a step back and think, okay, is this a woman in the red dress scenario? Is this a distraction, right? Because the idea is we want to focus on the one thing that is going to help us take an actionable step towards getting better in our game. We want to be Neo. We want to be the chosen one. And the way we're going to get there is by taking focused efforts towards one focus area at a time. Okay. Don't get distracted from your goals. It's okay to watch film for entertainment. But if you want to maximize your gains, this is the framework to think, right? So just to summarize, got a blocker. First of all, think if you need film at all. All right. If you don't need film, maybe you can ask the group, maybe you should go train, go do that. If you do need film, you've got some tips to watch film correctly. All right. Lastly, we're going to go through some bonus tips. Number one, watching your own film is the best. Getting footage of yourself is gold. So if you can watch yourself play, that's the best thing because you know what you're thinking in that moment, and then you can see what the actual field state is from a different perspective. So that's the best thing that you can do is get your own film, watch that. Another thing you can try and do is watch one player that you know is good. So if you know that one player is really good on defense and you're working on bidding on defense, then watch that one player, see how they move on the field, see how they position, see how they're moving across the field. Watch useful games that you can learn from. Okay, don't watch the games where it's super rainy and super windy and there's a million turnovers and they're just playing long ball and you're not getting anything away from it. So watch useful games that you can actually learn from, right? Rewind often to see what happened and skip dead time. Pretty simple, right? If you notice that someone just gets a really good block, go back 10 seconds, go back 20 seconds and see what led to that moment. And then in Ultimate, there's plenty of calls. There's a stoppage every other second. So skip dead time. Don't waste your time sitting through all those calls. And then the last comment is, if you have nothing better to do and can't train, watching film is a great way to generate new perspectives. So if you really can't train, if you don't have anything better to do, film is certainly something that you can do to generate new perspectives, even if you don't have a particular focus in mind. Cool. That's all for this week. Next week, we have some exciting stuff. One of our members is going to be taking my spot. Matt is going to be helping us going through a little bit of ultimate mindset and his learnings as in the psychology industry. So thanks, Matt, for taking that on board. And I'm very excited to hand the microphone over to Matt next week. But that's all for today. Now it's question time. Now I'd like to open up the floor. In question time, we can talk about anything related to the topic of watching film, women in the red dress, distractions, focus, things like that. But I'd love to also dive into your particular problems or blockers that you guys might have. Any questions that you guys might have in your current ultimate journeys? And of course, it's a very casual session, so don't be shy. Feel free to unmute. Feel free to ask anything. What do you guys think? Fair enough in terms of the reflections when it comes to watching film?
Yeah, I think it'll be helpful. Because I never really watched film, and I know I need to. So just the first steps of trying to figure out what to do instead of just like kind of watching it.
Yeah, well,
So I think that'll help.
Yeah, that's great, Wilson. I think my hot take is like, if you are struggling with something, odds are there's a lot of things that you can do up to that point that will help you improve that thing without having to watch film. Right. That's my hot take. Film is certainly a tool that we can use, but Like if you're struggling with your flick huck, just go out and throw flick hucks, right? And so that comes back to another thing that we were kind of talking about Noah yesterday, which was oftentimes the solution is the simple thing that's difficult. And so we're talking about getting faster and working on our speed, Noah. And so in that scenario, I hope it's okay for me to share, but the simple thing that's difficult is just to go out and work on our speed and do that over a course of days, weeks, months. And that's the process of getting faster, right? If you're really struggling with getting better on bidding, the simple and difficult thing is just to practice bidding and practice that layout progression and getting more comfortable hitting the ground. And so oftentimes we get caught up in a woman in a red dress scenario where we're like, oh, we should watch some film, or we should go do this very complicated drill that's going to help me with this thing. But oftentimes it's the simple but difficult thing that's going to help us make the biggest difference.
Yeah. And I think like the film is very helpful. Film is very helpful at times, but I think probably the most useful part of your, I guess, lecture is just like taking one aspect of your game and focusing all your energy on it, improving that, and then moving to another aspect. Because I feel like a lot of times, like there's something I want to work on, but then, you know, woman in the red dress comes along and end up just doing backhand hucks for an hour and a half instead of working on what I need to do. So I think that's, you know, like I know that, but also like just being able to see that like this will help you improve more than just doing whatever is helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for context, I just had my third Sydney Sunder selection on last night. And can you guys guess how many hucks I threw?
One or two?
I don't know.
Take a stab. One or two from Luca. What do you think, Matt? Jason?
5?
I thought 2 as well.
5, 2? Okay, cool. I threw 0.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it goes to show, if I spent all of this week practicing my hucking and at a super important selection event, I threw 0 hucks, how much did that practice help me in that moment?
None.
None,
None.
nada. So wouldn't it have been so much more impactful if I practiced cutting in a very tight space or bidding on defense, right? I was close to I was really close on a few sniffs, but I didn't quite get it. Or maybe it would have been more impactful for me to just throw unders, right? Or breakthroughs, right? There are a few scenarios in the game where I was pretty close to taking on this breakthrough, but I probably didn't feel super confident taking it on. Maybe if I had another session working on that, I would have been able to do that in the selection, right? And so I threw 0 hucks. And I think a lot of people go to the field and they rip 100 hucks, forehand and backhand, and they call it a day. And the question is like, how often are you actually doing that in a game? And so you're completely right, Luca. Woman in a red dress. We always want to cling on to the new and exciting thing. And we have to remember that the woman in the red dress is trying to keep us inside the matrix. And we have to be Neo. We have to be the chosen one. We have to remember why we're here, what we're prioritizing. And we have to remember what the one simple but difficult thing is that we have to do that's going to help us take our game to the next level. Great reflection, Luca. That's good. Any questions? And if you're not able to join us on chat, on call, you can throw it in chat as well, Ryan, in case you can't speak. Any other thoughts and reflections? Matt, you look deep in thought right now.
Yeah. Try to think about this past week. It was like thinking about well, I'm kind of reflecting back on my past week, but I think like right now, having tried out a little bit of like the switcheroo and even playing like very tight defense, now I'm like starting to really understand what that feels like, right? And so I've really been asking myself now what the balance is between when to provide buffer and when to not provide buffer. I think that's one of the that's going to be like, I find myself shifting towards like now feeling that way. I think this week I'm still, so something that at least Eric and I have talked about in our one-on-one calls is like something that I needed to work on was playing defense. Like for a large portion of at least my Frisbee career was playing a lot of offense, played a lot of O-line. And so this year when I was told I'm going to be on the D line, I looked like I looked so lost on the field. And so this year was like really learning how to play defense. And so right now the focus has been like playing tight defense no matter what, just to get a sense as to how that feels. And in certain situations it's great, and in certain situations it's bad, or like, you know, it's not very helpful. So I'm starting to like figure out, or starting to wonder where that balance is. And I don't know if and I wonder if it's also like watching film. Like I've been recording some of my own like league games and watching that film of seeing when, I think like today's topic of like choosing a specific thing to like just notice is very helpful. Just because like I've like watched film in the past, like a lot of film in the past, and it's very easy to get distracted by like the cool oyo flick that, you know, that like Rowan throws, and you're just like, oh gosh, like, I'm gonna go out and like
I'm gonna go work on that.
throw some coin slot throws or something, you know, like
It's
like
like,
I want that cool, yeah, I want that, like, yeah, I'm gonna practice those a couple times. So I guess like, I mean, I was trying to figure out whether there's a question in there. And I mean, like, my question would be like, I mean, like, how do you find that buffer though? Like, it's like, yeah, like growing that awareness of when to be tight, when to not, when I, you know, maybe you can afford to like maybe not be there. There are a couple of like very, at least for me, very maybe more obvious examples when like maybe my guy is a little bit on the break side, or they look very disengaged. But I don't know if you have cues that you use to be able to know when to kind of go like on and off.
yeah,
That on and off switch. So that would be my question, at least.
I think it comes down to the concept of what is our offensive plan A, because every single player is going to have different preferences, right? There's going to be certain players that, let's think about from the offensive's perspective. There's going to be certain players that are going to be very happy cutting into a buffer. There's going to be other players that are very happy having a really close player on them and then losing them, right? And there's going to be players that will feel more uncomfortable if someone starts off in a buffer and then quickly closes that, and then there's some contact there. And there's going to be other players that are uncomfortable when you start close and then give a buffer for a second and then switch the buffer a little bit, right? And so I think the answer is that there's no one right answer. Every offensive player is different, and every defensive player is different as well, right? And so really the goal over the course of a game is to figure out what is taking this player the most out of their plan A. In other words, what can I do to take this player into the most uncomfortable state that they can be in? And so I'll share this anecdote, which is the same one that I shared last week, which was me marking against an Australian representational level cutter, Mark Wee. And I really wanted to stop his unders because his throws were so good. But me just holding that under force, yeah, he didn't get under, but he just kept spamming the same deep cut over and over again. And he didn't get on the first go, he didn't get on the second go, but he got it so open on the third go. And so if that's their plan A, we want to stop that. We want to see, okay, maybe for the first time I hold this under buffer, but maybe second I switch it up and maybe I show the under for the initial scenario, and then I flip onto the back shoulder and then I really pressure the under, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is the game of Ultimate, if we just present something that's simple for the offense to solve, they're going to develop a game plan and they're just going to solve it, right?
Yeah.
And so we need to take them out of the game plan. And so another anecdote that I like to share is the game of chess. Does anyone play like chess here at all? Yeah,
A little.
a little.
I'm horrible.
And so the idea is, if you're against, so like Magnus Carlsen, the best chess player possibly in the world, or definitely currently, he does this thing where chess is very prescribed in the sense that white 51% of the chance, 51% of the time wins. And the moves are kind of forecasted up to 20, 30 moves ahead, right? All theory is set out. And so what does Magnus Carlsen do sometimes? Because he knows he's just better in kind of freeform chess, he does something weird in the opening, right? And so the idea is it takes the opponent out of their plan A, which is playing into the very prescribed way of playing, and instead brings it into his realm, which is the free form, which is where he gets an edge. And so we can apply that in Ultimate, is like, where can we almost do something weird? And yes, by the computer, by the book, it's not the best thing to do, but maybe just gives us enough edge to get a turn, maybe 1 out of 10 times. But maybe it's that 10th time that caused that turnover, that is that layout block that gets us onto the team. Or maybe it's that layout block that helps us win on universe point coming out on defense. And so we've got to play our odds, and we have to, as much as we can. Yes, sometimes it's best to play the prescribed way, but sometimes we've got to think about scenarios on the field where we can do something funky, do something weird, switch pivot in a certain way, or move our body in a certain way, change our buffer in a certain way to take our offense out of plan A and make them the most uncomfortable that they can possibly be. Pardon me. Any questions?
So this is a little bit unrelated from
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
Yeah, please. Victor.
But next week I've got my tryouts for my team, and I feel like most aspects of my game I've been able to improve pretty well, and like gotten to a level that I am satisfied in for tryouts, that I feel like would be able to at least be suitable for the team. But probably the main thing that I'm still trying to work on is my cutting, specifically my dump cuts. I'm a handler, and typically I like to be center handler, which means really I should have, good arounds for those centering throws and things like that. But really, like, and I know in my mind kind of what I'm supposed to do theoretically, but really I just haven't been able to improve those at all, I feel like, since last year. And I feel like it's still easy for defenders to guard what I'm doing. So I'm kind of wondering if there's any way to improve that.
Yep. I have some reflections, but I'd love to open it up to the floor as well. If there's any quick things that people think are impactful when they're handling at a selection event. And any opinions for the floor? No problems if there aren't, but I'm happy to chime in. Cool. So Rowan, I'm not sure where I saw this, but I think he posted a Instagram reel or something. But I'm not sure if I agree with this, but the idea was that like the first handler cut gets one move, and the second handler cut gets two moves. I'm not sure if I agree with that, but there's certain aspects that I think really apply for especially a selection environment. Is that like the best piece of feedback that got me onto Sunder my first season was one of the World Games players for Australia. Like I asked him, like at the warm up, I was like, "Hey Alex, like, do you have any advice?" And he was like, for a handler position like me, and he was like, "Just go up the line." And I was like, "What? Like, what if the swing's on?" And he was just like, "Yeah, but like, if the swing's completely on, obviously take it. But in a selection environment, you're not playing with people you know. There's weird conditions. Everyone's trying out for a role, and so you want to eliminate the complexity. And so, unless the round is something that you can confidently just make one move and get, just attack the upline. And so, what that does is, number one, it gives you a chance to get the disc in power position, and you can actually win the upline, right? And if you start winning the upline, people will start giving you the around more. But the other thing is, if you don't get it, it creates flow, it creates leverage so that there's an open space on the opposite side of the field for someone to flow in, right? And so how many times have you been playing and you've been like, you see this handler person and they make like 3 or 4 jinks and they don't get open, and all of a sudden, then they decide to go up line and then the stall's too high and there's no good option. And you're like, wow, that was terrible. I'm sure we've all been there as well, right? So we're not all free from that criticism. But the idea is, especially in a selection environment, as much as we can, we want to attack the upline if the around isn't already free. By all means, if they're just poaching the lane and the mark's not sealing around at all and you have a free swing, take it. Show off your prowess, show off your disc skills. But also, if there is a little bit of pressure, if the mark is super around and that around break's likely not going to be on, attack the upline, try to get the disc in power position. Worst case, you generate flow and there's leverage that opens up on the opposite side of the field. Does that make sense, Luca?
Yeah.
That'd be my 2 cents. So what are your reflections there? Okay. Do you have any follow-up questions on that?
Yeah, I'd say, I think I know how to attack an upline, decently well, but I just think if the mark is really protecting that upline, and if the mark is really protecting that upline and your person is staying really no around on you, would you still just want to try to attack that upline and just hope the mark gets broken? Or
so walk me through this example. You have the disc on the
All right.
sideline. Yeah, so you can see this is the disc. Where's the mark? Is it around towards the sideline?
The mark is hard inside, trying to protect the
like this?
like that.
And then this is what you're being faced with? Okay, cool.
Yeah, just like that.
All right. Any thoughts from the group, first of all? I'd like to pose it to the group. What do we think about this particular scenario? Sometimes we have a player like this, sometimes we have a player like this.
I mean, I like doing J cuts around.
Like this?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
Or even going around the handler, just trying to
like that
separate. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm not crazy good at handler offense.
I like that. I mean, that's always an option. It depends what small space cutting you're used to, Luca. But if I'm gonna be completely honest, if we're in this scenario, first of all, ideally, when the disc is on the sideline, they're going to be looking downfield for 2 seconds. But as a reset, we usually want to get in line, ideally positive, slightly positive the disc. And that just opens up this negative space that we can throw to. And so sometimes once we get positive, this defender ends up going end zone side of us, and we can just get this easy swing. So that'll be my option 1. Okay, get positive on the disc. And so we'll take a step back. Option 1, get positive of the disc, and see what the defender does. Okay?
Mhm.
If they go end zone side, simple reset.
Yeah.
Now here's the complexity. If they're playing it closer, right? Or if they're playing it more negative and really stopping the reset. Obviously, in an actual game, right, we have a few options. We can go away from the disc, we can kind of squirrel around here, we can squirrel around here. But for the purpose of selections, if that's not something that you've practiced and you're ready for, I honestly think the best option is to just attack this space.
All right.
Because number one, you're beating them to that space because they're playing you like this. Number two, it gives the chance for the thrower to break the mark, inside break or around break. Number three, you can turn that into a deep cut. So maybe they get a swing to another player and then you're on here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, number four, it creates leverage. Like all of a sudden, this side of the field is open straight away. You haven't done any dancing. You're already positive. So you've cleared the fastest you possibly can just based on your field position. And it opens up space for a field to come in.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
So number one, get positive. Number two, see what the defender gives you. Number three, just take what they give you. For the purpose of selection, just take what they give you.
All right. Thank you.
I think that's a pretty good summary.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, we're gonna do 4 more minutes of Q&A, and then we have our sacred faff time where we can talk about whatever we want, and the recording will be off. So I might have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Jason, you've been awfully quiet.
I'm good. Just my kid's crying, so that's why I'm muted.
Okay, I don't know if I can help you with any of that. Also, feel free to tend to your kid. I can give you the recording and for the call after.
Oh, good. I gave him some drill to do, so he's in the playground.
So good. Hey, Mark, how's it going? Mark's muted.
Yep. Sorry. Yeah, it's good. I thought we changed the time. That's why I was late. I'm sorry.
No, all good, all good. You're in time for the last question or two, so
That's fine. Yeah, and the fat pen.
You'll have the recording available.
Sweet.
Anything, Noah, Wilson, Ryan, anything that you guys might have a question on? Or Mark, feel free to jump in on a question as well, but conscious that you missed the context.
I wish I had a question. I just
Oh,
haven't been
Yeah,
we've been
Wilson.
on break, so I haven't had practice to ask the questions.
Well, I guess I'll add some thoughts to the whole
Please.
question that Luca posed, which was, yeah, like I feel like in the context of tryouts, I don't know about you guys, but I know for me, I have certainly felt the pressure to feel like I have to be able to do everything. You know, like I have to be able to throw a 50, like whatever, 60 or 60 yards, I don't know, a full field puck, and then be able to, be able to get open on any cut of that I do, and be able to dominate every single person that I'm playing against. And in my experience, I've learned that in a tryout environment, especially when there's no chemistry, you've never seen these people before, you don't know what any of them are even capable of. I learned that it's like, yeah, like I think it's a lot easier to just focus on what your strengths are and really leaning into some of those things, and like not necessarily like trying anything super new, I would say. Because yeah, Eric made a couple great points about like, yeah, like keep it simple, you know. Maybe when you make the team, then you can talk about, okay, what does it actually look like when like then we can work on like maybe getting open in that on that reset in the center as a center handler. But then for the context of like at least tryouts, it's like, yeah, like I mean I've been in captain as well, so I've had to do evaluating myself. And one of the biggest things that do stand out are when the players make the more simple decisions. And then it's just like, okay, they made space for that fill to come in. They're not just like kind of dancing around in that mid space, clogging up that area. And so I think I just like lean into a lot of the strengths would be my like has been my experience when I did well. And not being too worried about the things that I'm working on, right? Those and trusting in yourself that what you've done so far, what you've done so far will be good enough.
Yeah, I think a lot of people tend to think that, you know, captains really remember all the mistakes you make when they're evaluating. And I think to a point, you know, if you make some really bad drop or something like that, they will remember it. But also, if you are able to play into your strengths, one or two drops or one bad dump cut isn't going to completely ruin your chances. You just need to figure out how to play into what you want to do and kind of do what you want to do on all of your possessions and play into your strengths, like you were saying.
And also, first of all, great points, Matt, and great points, Luca. I think that is a phenomenal call out. I would just add that you don't have to know the answer. It's a tryout, and there are selectors who know what they're looking for, or should have an idea of what they're looking for. And so you should just ask.
True.
And so in my this year, in my Sunder tryouts this year, even though I've made the squad previously, I still made an effort to chat with the selectors and say, hey, like, what do you need from me? And so after the second selection event, or in the middle of my second two out of three selection events, I went up to two of the captains and I said, hey, like, do you have any feedback? What can I be doing better? Or what do you want to see from me from the end of this session and also the last session? And the feedback was, don't drop, like, be clean on turns, like have no turns. The feedback was that in the last few weeks that I'd been turning it over a little bit more than I normally do. And so I knew that in the last session, all I had to do was focus on having no turns. And that's something that I could actionably do as a handler on the team, right? That's something I could control. So take on the brakes when they're on, but apart from that, don't take on anything too speculative, right? And so I ended up with no turns for the last session, but I also threw no hucks, but that's okay, right? I was moving the disc well, I was cutting well, etc. So you can just find out. And all those things that Matt said as well, keep it simple, right? The players that generate and promote flow, that is looked highly upon as well, just as much as getting open yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah, it goes to show, like, no matter where you are in your ultimate development journey, there's always things that you can be doing better. And sometimes it's as simple as catching everything that's given to you, or simply just not throwing it away. Even like at the top Australian club level that I'm trying out for, my focus for the last session was just not throwing anything away. Right. And so ties back to that point, is like often we just need to be practicing and doing what's simple but difficult. All right. Just getting in reps of simple, consistent throws with the right shape, with the right touch, and doing that, what we're actually going to apply in a game more. Cool. I think we're good, and I think we can spend 5 minutes doing some faff. But what I'd like to do is just quickly share my screen and kind of do a what's going on in the community. So obviously introduce yourself category. We've got a few new joiners. So make sure after this call, you guys jump on and show Chris, Sharif, and Ellis some love as well. Obviously, we've got Daph and Jason who've joined as well early in the week. Don't forget, post inside the games gallery. If you guys have any questions and stuff, you can leave it in there, or you can leave it in the questions category. And so Tristan had a question earlier this week on sky catching, and I made a quick video just to respond to that with the sky catching drill. On top of that, we have the classroom section. So I'm doing some work around it. Remember, we've got all the recordings available, the course I'm working on, and make sure to book in your private support call. So we can just jump on a small group call or a one-on-one call and we can chat. And remember, we've got our special cheeky access available to you guys as well. Q&A calls. And then right now, Mark is still on the leaderboard. Number 1, 226 points. What a guy. Mark, what do you have to say for yourself?
You know, I only have 11 classes I'm teaching this a week, so you know, I have a lot of time at work that I can just fuck around.
Yeah, all right.
And you know,
so that's gonna come in handy. Yeah, that skill set's gonna come in handy in February when we're giving away the Sky Trainer. So yeah.
Yeah, I already have one, so I'll just get another one for a friend of mine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it's
that's all for the updates for the group, and I think that's a good way to round out our development call for the Friday, 29th of November for me. So see you guys in the next one. I'm going to stop the recording now, and we're going to have 5 minutes of faff time where we can just chat casually. Okay.